Third Eye Faithful. Didn't see you there. Just finishing up some last minute gift wrapping. Speaking of gifts, we've got something extra special waiting for you. Joining us today, we've got two killer creators, James TYNION IV and Josh HIXSON, to tell us about a brand new holiday tale that is sure to delight. Please welcome the co-creators of The Deviant. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well. I'm very happy to be here.
Good.
Tell us a little bit about The Deviant. What do you guys have planned? What have you guys sowed the seeds for?
Let's call it a thriller, let's call it a horror, let's call it a Christmas story. It's a very personal work. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and Josh and I have been talking about working on this together for years. I'm just so freaking excited that now it's here and it's out just in time for the holiday season.
So give us a little bit of insight on the inspiration behind The Deviant.
Well, The Deviant taps into a lot of my deep fascination with serial killers that goes all the way to my childhood. I saw Silence of the Lambs way too young. My mom showed it to me when I was like 12 years old, and she covered my eyes during all the scary bits, but she covered them like this. I was also a queer kid growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In the 90s and early 2000s, right after Jeffrey Dahmer had murdered a lot of people.
Near Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
And my high school was actually 15 blocks away from the apartment building.
Wow.
That he had done it all in. And then Wisconsin in general is like the home of Ed Gein and like a lot of the mythologies around serial killers. But there's also like the weird blend of like Jeffrey Dahmer in particular as a queer serial killer and as a young man figuring out my own sexuality and hearing about homosexuality as a concept via like Silence of the Lambs and the existence of Jeffrey Dahmer, which is not a great way to find it out, but it created this tension in me that I've wanted to explore in fiction for a really, really long time. And I wanted to do that in a story that tapped into beyond my love of those specific types of stories, but also like the work of David Fincher. That's like I wanted to do a grounded story. So much of my work has like a high concept twist to it with a science fiction element or a fantasy element or supernatural element in some way, but this doesn't have that. This is a story about human characters in a human world, which it feels honestly very exciting to finally get to tell in the creator-owned space. And getting to do that with an amazing talent like Josh is a dream come true. Like I've loved his work for years, going all the way back to Shanghai Red. Like we've known each other for a while and like done little odds and ends together, but it's like we were talking about doing something substantial. And I'm always afraid when it's like I pitch like something that's gonna be contemplative and talky. But I remember when I turned in the first script, you were like most excited to draw the 10-page conversation sequence in it.
It's my favorite part of the book too. Just figuring out like the acting, like it's like its own kind of challenge. It was a lot of fun to do.
And you mentioned Silence of the Lambs, and I definitely see the parallels there between Michael and the Deviant Killer and Clarice and Hannibal.
Yeah.
You speak about framing like queerness in horror media differently, and I think it's very interesting that you made not only the antagonist as we see queer, but also the protagonist, and the protagonists like people who are all around them. The entire sphere exists in queerness and not just the like evil within it.
No, and I wanted to make something that was uncomfortable. And I think in general I've always been fascinated with queer villains, and sometimes like very problematic queer villains. And it's just like I wanted to like lean right into that, while also making this sort of thriller that anybody who enjoys thrillers, regardless of whether this is the line of the line that they would take into it, but it's just like we wanted to create a very scary book that digs into emotionally dark places. And you know, the journey that we're going to take Michael on in particular is gonna go to some very dark places. So
Can you explain the dynamic between the two of you? How does the flow of ideas work, and how do you guys bounce off of each other to create something that is just so cohesive? What does that look like for the both of you?
that's really interesting.
I think honestly it's as simple as like I get the script, it's really good, and then I draw it. It's really that simple.
I mean, like, I think we had a lot of conversations early on. A lot of times the way that I work is, you know, my actual scripts themselves are not, like, I focus a lot more on the character acting than necessarily the setting work, but it's like in establishing scenes and feelings, like that's where, you know, I'll dig in a big way, and like, you know, try to capture the atmosphere of it. But we had talked a lot about the sort of like the open like snow, and I had known that I wanted that kind of Hannibal Clarice like back and forth element to it. I wanted to, you know, and then on top of that, it is the like that kind of cold quality to the whole thing. But you know, and especially just starting with the like that opening sequence in the department store where we're seeing like Christmas presented at like in its most iconic, then the way that we cut against that, you know, it's like once we sort of establish that the central feeling of the story, a lot of it comes pretty naturally, like because it is so character driven. Once we understand who the characters are, you know, it's just riffing on that and building on that. But it's also one of those things where like sometimes there are new characters that weren't a part of the initial like pitch for the story that get cooked along the way. There's an FBI agent that's introduced in the second issue that I'm very, very excited about for people to meet, who brings a very, very interesting flavor to it. Like it was a brand new thing thrown in, like kind of late in the process that then, you know, it added like an extra bit of flair, and then like you leaned in on the exact visual element that I was hoping would work. I don't want to spoil the book, but it's like I'm excited for people to see.
So then that leads into my next question of when you're developing what the character looks like, are you being given any clues of like, oh, he's a brunette? Or is it just like you're reading these scripts and you're visualizing in your head what this person must look like?
No, James gives a pretty good detailed description of like what each character looks like. I mean, the toughest was definitely the killer. Even in the beginning, you were sort of saying like Jason-esque, like that sort of like dead, you know, lifeless killer. And we went through like a lot of iterations of like what the mask would look like, and I saw like some Twilight Zone mask or something that was kind of cool. It was like all black, and we definitely wanted it to have like, I did one with like the rosy cheeks or something, and he was like, that's it.
Well, and I think like one of your first exploratory pieces actually ended up becoming the cover for issue 1.
Yeah. I think I was just trying to nail down like the vibe of like snow, because I'd never done like any kind of like snow comics or illustrations or whatever. Like how the hell is this going to look? How am I going to color it during the day or during night? And I did like a simple snow scene, and then like took one of the drawings from the like the character sketches of the killer, and just like plopped him in to see what he would look like. And I sent it to James and everyone, and he was like, "That's the cover."
and it is.
And now here we are.
And here we are.
And I think this sort of like creepy atmosphere really shines through in the desolate landscapes and these open panels where it's like dark and there's snow and you're not seeing anything behind one character. Can you talk a little bit about how you create a horror atmosphere within your illustrations?
I think that was one of the first things I like mentioned to James about, like he was asking like what I want to draw in the book, and like I was thinking of like Fargo or whatever, like those open sort of like establishing shots or whatever. Just wanting to do like, again, like sort of build atmosphere and like tension and the horror and everything, and in those scenes. I don't know, that's kind of like my thing. I like to you know, figure out how the hell to make a comic book scary.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I love the 2-page title sequence in every issue is like this very like quiet, desolate image in like every issue.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be black, like in the script it was like just all black or whatever. I was like, that could be cool, but how do we like just make it a snow scene and like each one is different or whatever. It's like very quiet. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing for the book.
Yeah.
It's like even the portions that are invoking some like essence of coziness, like the 4 weeks until Christmas giant Santa sign, you're looking at that and you're thinking to yourself, oh goodness, 4 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Start the countdown timer.
Yeah. A lot of bad things can happen in 4 months.
So the setting of the original crime that takes place in Milwaukee, 1973, what about like the time period, the location really lends itself to the crime that you're trying to build?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think part of it is, I think there is a great, or it's not great, nothing about it is great. There is a parallel, I think, in where we are culturally right now and where we were in the 70s. And the 70s is the peak era of, you know, serial killers and, you know, like becoming a concept that like people understood. It's when the term was really coined and all of that. I wanted there to be the sort of then and now of it all. And it's also like something that taps into the way we used to interact with Christmas then versus how we interact with Christmas now. That's kind of like an undercurrent through it all. It was a moment in America that felt like a lot of fissures had like cracked open in the culture, and I feel like that's what it feels like to live today. There's a lot that's changed socially, particularly in terms of like how queer people interact with the world, but then there's a lot that hasn't. And it's just like that parallel mattered a lot to me. But then on top of that, it's just like there's, especially in like a crime thriller kind of story, it's like the 70s are the apex of that kind of thriller story.
Out of everything that you've drawn so far, what has been your favorite panel?
I mean, it's not really a panel because it's the full splash, but I think the full splash is probably, that took a while because there was a moment where I was like, I don't even think I sent it to you, but there was a moment where I thought it could be cool if it like zoomed out. Yeah. And we see like the reveal of Santa like really small and he's like about to hack this guy up. But I did like so many iterations of
I want to
like
see all
the
those
reveal.
iterations.
Yeah, I never sent it to you. I don't know why. But there was one where he was like really teeny and like it pulled away, and I thought it was kind of cool. But the whole point of it was to like show him. And yeah, I just like there's just like figuring out the pose of like how does something look creepy, especially a Santa, because it can very easily look silly. How to make that like scary was like very hard, and I did it a bunch of times. So even though it's not really a panel, it's the full splash. That's probably the one. Yeah.
And for me, I would say there's a sequence in the middle, and this was actually like the page of original art that I got from issue 1 is one of like my favorite sequences in the book. It's a cutaway that happens in a way that we don't really do. Like there's flashbacks in the book, but the way we cut between the past and present is pretty clear. But it's the one kind of more abstract jump into the past where we see a bit of Michael's childhood and we understand the first time that he like heard of the Deviant killer and all of that. Honestly, it's the panel of him reacting to like realizing that this killer was gay. The panic in his face of like this moment of recognition of a thing that he didn't know existed, that was captured so perfectly. And it's like that sequence is one of my favorite 2 pages in the book, but also this like killer reveal is really good.
It's a good choice. So good. without that flashback, I think that a lot of the book kind of falls apart. Like those 2 pages are very important.
Yeah.
And that kind of calls back to what you were talking about, your first experiences with queerness being something that was painted in such a negative light. Maybe the most horrific part is hearing those little kids and how they're speaking. Oh, they're looking at the house and recalling these memories and the stories they've heard, and just the language that they use that is so dripping with with hate. It creates a very good still of what the times looked like then versus what they look like now. And since you guys are just the rock stars of horror right now, what is the like ultimate horror trope that never fails to make your skin crawl? No matter how many times you see it, you're always going to be spooked.
God, I mean, honestly, there is just something about, and this is something that you can't really do in comics. It's more of a movie technique. It's when you know that someone is moving through a space in a film and like the music's playing and all of that, and the viewer knows that there is like the killer is in the room, but the person is moving through the room like not knowing there's another person in that space. There is something about that just like always gets to me, and then especially if I'm watching like a movie at home alone, I have to like go turn on all of the lights and like make sure that there are no secret people like watching me. Yeah, no, that one always gets to me.
The scariest part of any like sort of movie or anything is when there's like that realization moment. I guess it's kind of similar to that, but it's when someone realizes something in the moment, and like, you know, I think that happens a lot in the Deviant too, where you sort of have to like feel that from the character, and that probably, it's not really a trope, but I don't know that I have
But it
one.
still makes the skin crawl.
Yeah. No, it's the moment you know that you're out of your depth.
Yeah, but it's how you do it.
Yeah.
I think that makes it scary.
Yeah.
There's got to be some way to build that scene in comic books, whether it is those like you pull the panel, you know what I'm talking about, the children's book where you're pulling something and there's that like card opening music in the back. There's got to be some really kitschy, awful way to make that happen in comic books.
Now you've got my brain cooking. That's dangerous.
Speaking of sound effects, we're talking about music, we're talking about creating the atmosphere. There are a lot of written out sound effects happening in this book. And as the co-creators, I would like to ask for your personal interpretations. I know you're not voice actors, just stick with me. I would like to ask for your personal interpretations of some of the sound effects that exist within this book. Starting, of course, here.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would this sound like to you?
Well, it's breathing. It's like a sort of choking.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Yeah. That yours was better. Mine sounded like a turkey.
Yours was a little bit less Christmas, a little bit more Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
A little gobble gobble. Next up, we've got a little bit of a switch in the consonant department. What does this sound like as you're...
I nailed this one.
You go first then.
It's like...
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, yeah, it's... No, that's the wrong.
It's too high. Lower.
Yeah. I would need some practice to do that correctly. Yeah, no, that's correct. That is the correct
that's
answer.
The one.
That is the canon answer.
Yes.
One last one. The most iconic. And I know that this is very similar to the one that you just read, but you gotta make it a little bit different.
Maybe just softer.
Yeah, it would be like...
He's not... Because the last scene, he was just running in the snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... Yeah. Yeah,
like
that.
it's like... It is just like it's a rattled breathing.
Yeah,
Like,
raspy.
yeah.
And this time he's got a chance to build that up. He's not out of breath. He's not fresh off the adrenaline. This is...
Yeah, he's excited.
Who chose that sound to be written out the way that it was?
What? It's definitely James. Yeah.
I think actually that may have been our editor, Steve Fox, because I am not great at SFX. I will probably write like SFX, distorted breathing, and then Steve reminds me before it gets lettered, it's just like, James, you have to choose what that is. And then I'm like, oh god, like maybe something like this, and then Steve makes it make sense. And that's why I love Steve Fox.
Shout out Steve Fox.
Yeah. And also shout out to Haas, who did the amazing lettering job on that, because it's like...
he did a lot of iterations of it too.
Yeah.
Like that, there was like 6 that we had to pick from, of like just the way he breathes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way it sort of like peters off the
Yeah.
page, it really gives you a very distinct idea of like where's the sound coming from in the room and what the atmosphere looks like while this is all happening. Yeah. Some handwritten notes. How lovely. We'll start here.
All right.
From Meanie Angel 47.
Very nice. What has been your favorite project to work on? I mean, this is always a hard one to answer, Because, you know, honestly, like, it really is the project that I'm working on right now is my favorite project, and I think it's like I have to think that way. But sometimes it's actually the project that I'm going to get to right after the one I'm working on, because while I'm working on something, I can also get a little frustrated and I'm like ready to be done, and I'm excited to work on the next thing.
The anticipation.
But that's like, you know, but I work on like 20 things at the same time, so it's like I've got a few of them. Or maybe I should say the Deviant is my all-time favorite one to work on.
I mean, my answer is basically going to be the same. The thing you're working on in the moment is probably what you're most excited about. So yeah, it's definitely the Deviant.
And I mean, I will say, like, before I was working on Creator Own, that was not always true. But now that I'm working on projects that are, you know, really come from the heart, and the only reason we're making these books are because we want to make them, that helps make each book my favorite while I'm doing it.
And another fan question coming in.
Mr. E. to Thea. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Describe the Deviant in 5 words or less. There's a murder Santa Claus.
Alright. Fucked up, sad, and gay.
Yeah, that's great.
That's got to be the next cover quote.
Yeah.
Fucked up, sad, and gay.
Yeah.
And another question coming in from Blurred Expressions.
How do you go about turning a new idea into an amazing story? You know, honestly, so much of this is about figuring out the, like, kind of emotional quality of the story you want to tell. I talk about it a lot in terms of the vibes of the piece. And it really is just, it's about the feeling you are trying to capture as creators, like in the story, and it's the kind of feeling you want your readers to experience while they're reading it. Once you sort of have the raw pieces of an idea, it's just like, and you figure out what that feeling is, that's when I know, like, okay, this is the artist I want to approach for something like this, because I think that they would help express that feeling. But then it's also, that's where the conversations start happening, because it's making sure that that central feeling is something that that your co-creator is equally excited about expressing. And then once you have that, everything else is just like, you know, as long as you are hitting that nerve in what you're doing, you're succeeding. So it's just like, it's doing that well and telling a good story and like putting all of these pieces together. But it's the central feeling is the most like crucial part of the process.
I mean, I'm not writing the story, so it's like I'm conveying it. So
Yeah.
my answer is basically going to be the same. You have to all be kind of on the same page, and I have to like convey the feeling. Yeah.
Go-to holiday movie.
Honestly, It's a Wonderful Life.
Home Alone.
If you were Santa, what cookies would you want people to leave out for you?
Honestly, a classic chocolate chip cookie.
Yes.
Milk,
No.
Almond milk.
hot chocolate, or eggnog?
Hot chocolate every time.
Eggnog.
It's wrong.
Little mini marshmallows?
Yes. Yes.
Also yes, but not in the eggnog.
Wrapping paper or gift bag?
Wrapping paper. It's more, you put more effort into it.
I like a gift bag because I cannot wrap to save my life. And I wrote about that a little bit in the first pages of The Deviant.
Naughty or nice list?
I think I'm on the nice list. I think I've been good this year mostly.
I'm a pretty good person. Yeah, I'm getting on the nice list for sure.
It has been an absolute gift having the two of you here, which is why I would like to extend a gift to the both of you.
Oh my goodness.
Just for you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Should we open the card
together.
first? Or
Yes.
to James and Josh? Ho ho ho, motherfuckers. There we go. Let's see what we've got in here. Get Tiny Onion. Oh.